During my home renovation, the builder, trembling and pale, revealed an amazing, unexpected secret. As I stood in the dimly lit basement, the smell of wet wood and dust filled the air. Mike, the local builder I'd enlisted to help with my family's aging home, knelt before the creaky floorboards, sweat glistening on his forehead. "Sarah, you have to see this," he gasped, lifting a rotting board to reveal a hidden compartment beneath the stairs. My heart raced, anticipation mingling with fear as I caught sight of a weathered box nestled in the shadows. Pulling it out felt like unearthing buried treasure, but uneasiness clung to me. I knew this renovation was about more than just fixing a house. It was about rediscovering who I was beneath the weight of motherhood and a soul-sucking job at the grocery store. Thoughts of my ambitions and failures swirled as sharply as the dust motes dancing in the sunlight filtering through the basement window. It had been too long since I had dreamed of anything other than getting through each day. Mike took a deep breath, visibly shaken, and stared at the box, remnants of my grandfather's life now resting in my hands. Uneasiness gnawed at my insides. My grandfather had always been a figure of mystery, a faintly remembered man whose name was whispered in hushed tones, weighed down by unrealized ambition. As I tentatively opened the box, delicate letters tied with fraying twine fell into my lap like falling confetti. Each one was a chapter of someone else's unfulfilled dreams, ambitions about architecture and design that he never got to pursue because of his origins. That was the moment 100 emotions collided within me: anger at the world that had stifled his dreams, sympathy for the man I barely knew, and a deep longing for my own missed opportunities. Pressure mounted between my breastbone and throat, squeezing as my head spun with the fear of repeating his fate. Could I risk chasing after dreams myself when the financial strain of my mortgage and raising 2 kids was so immense? The comfort of stability for my children weighed heavier than the pull of my desires. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Taking a shaky breath, I delved deeper into the box, pulling out letters filled with hope that had aged alongside me. Each word echoed with a life cut short and a reminder of what I had stashed away in the far corners of my own heart. Yet, just as my resolve solidified, the idea of abandoning the renovation to escape the pressure weighing down on me tempted like a siren's call. I could easily walk away, leaving the past buried, rather than confront the risk of failure that loomed over my aspirations like a thunderstorm. The intensity of my emotions surged again as I shot Mike a glance, desperately seeking encouragement, while the tension between us thickened like fog rolling over the horizon. I questioned whether my grandfather's legacy was meant to lift me or drown me. With everything on the line: my home, my dreams, my identity. As shadows flickered in the corners of the basement, I faced the deepest dilemma of my life. Could I weave the threads of a challenging past into the fabric of a hopeful future? The answer teetered at the edge of my consciousness, leaving me grasping for clarity amid the emotional maelstrom. The thrill of discovery hung in the air as I brushed aside musty letters, unveiling revelations that echoed my own buried dreams. The basement felt both oppressive and liberating, a sanctuary and a prison. Each letter revealed aspirations that flickered like candlelight, igniting a desire within me to reignite my own extinguished passions. What if I could transform my grandfather's unrealized dreams into the foundation of my own? With determination swelling around my heartbeat, I finally broke the silence between us. "Mike, do you ever think about the paths not taken? What would you chase if you could do anything?" My voice trembled slightly, a reflection of my uncertainty. He paused, glancing around the dim room as if searching for an answer in the shadows. "All the time, Sarah. I always wanted to design houses, not just build them. But life gets busy, and sometimes those dreams fade. You're lucky to have a chance to rediscover what moves you." His words struck me. A chance. Could this renovation become the vehicle that transported me from mundane days filled with self-doubt to a brightness where dreams were tangible again? I couldn't help but wonder if this moment unearthing my grandfather's neglected ambitions might be a sign. Was it time to prioritize my vision over limitations? Mike and I explored the letters together, each penned with rich detail about architectural wonders. Sketches of designs he'd envisioned sparked with hope. The weight of their unrealized potential pressed against my chest, urging me toward action. Perhaps this box of letters was not just a glimpse into my grandfather's life but a challenge for me to embrace my own aspirations. I closed my eyes, imagining the vibrant colors of paint, the schisms of light in an open floor plan, and the comfort of creating a space that reflected not just my family, but me. A part of me wanted to resist financial cracks gnawed in my mind, warring against this tantalizing image of freedom and purpose. But an insistent whisper told me that acceptance wouldn't shield me from the pain of inadequacy. Instead, it would define it. Then, as if sensing my internal struggle, Mike spoke again, the resolve in his voice palpable. You have to trust yourself. If you start this project with love and intention, not just as a chore, you might breathe life back into your dreams. Do it for yourself, not just for your kids. I looked at him, feeling my walls inch lower. What if I fail? What if I can't handle the pressure? The fear hung in the air, heavy yet familiar. Failing means you tried, he contested, and trying is the first step toward success. But giving up means you'll never know who you could have become. With that simple statement, something shifted inside me. I stood taller, feeling the remnants of hopelessness start to dissolve. Yes, there were risks, financial burdens, time constraints, but standing still meant perpetuating stagnation. I held the letters tightly against my chest, cradling them like lifelines, knowing they could spark my motivation into a roaring flame. What began as a dusty renovation now stretched into a horizon filled with possibilities. I thought of design classes, community projects, and the very real idea of pursuing a creative career. Let us not just renovate the house, Mike. Let us renovate my life, I declared, a newfound determination sparking from within. Excitement coursed through my veins. This was more than a home improvement, it was my rebirth from complacency to action. But as I stood poised at the threshold of transformation, a nagging doubt remained. Was I truly ready to face the challenges that lay ahead? The moment lingered, charged with uncertainty and potential. Facing that nagging doubt, I could feel the reality of the past still tethering my ambitions. Therefore, the question hung in the air, vibrant and bold. Could I truly bridge the legacy of my grandfather's unfulfilled potential with my own renewed journey, or would the shadows of history keep me shackled? The moment crystallized in my mind like a snapshot. The goal ahead shimmered with possibility, but beneath that luminescence lay the tumult of apprehension. I had taken the first step, but careful consideration deepened into a broader question. How do I transform inspiration into action? I spent the next few days steeped in research, saturating my evenings with design theory and architectural principles. I bought books filled with illustrations of elegant spaces, absorbing each frame like a thirsty wanderer. Yet, beneath the excitement was an underlying current of panic. Self-doubt whispered beneath the surface. What if I didn't possess the natural talent? What if my ideas fell flat? As I wandered around the expansive yard, I visualized how I could extend the inside space to the outdoors, create a seamless flow. The sun warmed my skin, but I felt cold inside, a jarring contrast. My dream world remained tantalizingly out of reach. I hesitated. Proximity to what I desired made the fear of failure feel all the more acute. In my mind, the words of Mike echoed like an unrelenting refrain, trust yourself. He believed in transformation, but did I? Could I counter that voice of doubt with affirming truths about my own potential? Not one to back down from a challenge, I enrolled in a weekend design workshop. The classes were filled with vibrant energy, creative souls exchanging ideas, laughter punctuating the air. Each lecture ignited new sparks of innovation. I watched the instructor, a woman who exuded confidence and clarity, as she spoke of design principles with ease. My heart raced, torn between admiration and discontent. With each lesson, a darker thought tumbled in. What if I could never reach that level? At the end of the day, I took a deep breath, trying to anchor myself in the moment, reminding myself of my intentions. I reflected on what Mike had said about doing it for myself, to redefine my life through these endeavors. However, as I sat with my sketches and notes, a shadow crept back in. It was one thing to dream vividly, but quite another to step confidently into the realization of those dreams. After the workshop, I found myself retreating to the house. The letters sat atop my dining table, my grandfather's calligraphy still inspiring, even haunting. I grabbed a pen and began scribbling notes, thoughts swirling. Each word felt like another strand woven into the fabric of my intention. Gradually, the doubt began to evaporate, transforming into something stronger, a commitment to unlocking my potential. I wanted not only to understand design but to learn how to translate those ideas into tangible outcomes. I could bridge the gap between dreams and reality if only I would seize the time. Fueled by this new energy, I decided to tackle a small project first, one that involved the foyer. I outlined a plan to shift the focus of the space from function to flow, from a simple entryway to a welcoming gateway of possibilities. In my head, I pictured how every detail could resonate with my renewed vision. But doubt resurfaced yet again. What would my family think? Would they support this pivot I was making, or would they see me only as someone who couldn't settle down? My commitment receded slightly as fear knotted itself around my chest. The time had come to confront those fears head-on, not just for my own sake but to solidify this newfound path of authenticity. It's time to talk, I thought as I descended the stairs to gather my family. This would not simply be about my vision, it would also touch upon their expectations. But internal conflicts erupted like a storm as I contemplated the conversation ahead. How would they react when I revealed my desires? Would this be a journey of shared acceptance or a fracture line through the fabric of our family? As I reached the bottom step, my resolve faltered slightly. I steadied my breathing, ready to forge my truth, not only for me but for healing the past too. The door to our future awaited an answer, but would it be met with open arms or hesitance from those I loved most? The moment hung in the air, charged with a mix of anxiety and expectation. As I stood in the foyer, my heart pounded against my chest, echoing the uncertainty lacing my thoughts. My family was gathered, their expressions shifting between curiosity and concern. I drew a deep breath, preparing to reshape not only my life but potentially the perceptions they held of me. "Guys, there's something I need to share," I began, but the words felt heavy, as if gravity was pulling them back down into the pit of my stomach. The warm light pouring through the front windows didn't match the chill creeping through my veins. "Is everything okay?" My younger sister, Clara, leaned forward, a frown deepening on her brow. Her concern mirrored in the eyes of my parents, who exchanged apprehensive glances. It hit me then how tightly their hopes for me were woven into my identity. This was not merely a personal transition, it was a crack in the facade of who they thought I should be. "I want to dive into design," I blurted, the words tumbling out before I could reconsider. The room fell silent, the air thick and palpable. I could see their minds racing, processing this revelation, the implications curling like smoke around us. "Design? Like, as a career?" My dad asked, his voice a cautious balance of disbelief and curiosity. There it was, the crux of my fear laid bare. Would they see me as a dreamer, or acknowledge my evolution? Yes. I believe there's a market for my ideas, and I want to start with our home, beginning with this foyer. I've been researching, sketching. I want to transform it into something that flows, that welcomes. The enthusiasm trying to spill from me was met with a sobering silence. I could almost hear the weight of expectations crashing down. Mom was the first to speak after an eternity. "You're sure it's what you want? What about your job security?" Her voice wavered, tinged with the unstated fear that I was veering off the well-trodden path for something uncertain. "I know it's a risk," I countered, desperation threading my words. "But it feels right, Mom. I need to pursue this both for me and to prove that I can own my choices." My statement lingered, and with it came the suffocating fear of their judgment. Did they understand the gravity of what I was attempting to do? "I admire your courage," Clara chimed in, breaking the tension. "It's brave to follow your heart. But I guess I'm afraid it won't work out, you know. What happens if it doesn't?" In that moment, I realized my journey was reflective of a deeper struggle, one mirrored within my family. I was forging ahead not only to realize my dreams but also to confront the fears that loomed within our shared history. I looked at each face before me, hoping they could see my conviction. What if it does? I challenged gently, allowing a glimmer of hope to penetrate the weight of the discussion. Their expressions softened, yet the hesitance lingered like a shadow. As the conversation unfolded, I veered into planning specific designs, the layout of the foyer, the colors, and the materials. I illustrated images I had envisioned, hopeful they might share my excitement. With every attempt to draw them in, I felt a rush of authority over my narrative. But as faces brightened and nods of understanding began to show, an unsettling thought crept into my mind. Was I ready to navigate this terrain alone, especially with their hesitance lurking beneath the surface? I had fired the opening shots in a personal revolution, yet the battle for acceptance both from myself and from my family was still at its inception. When I finally laid the last sketch on the table, that surge of defiance I felt was interwoven with fresh doubt. Would they come to support the transformation of this shared space, or would the past linger too heavily for them to embrace my future? This budding sense of independence called for execution, yet uncertainty loomed over me like a storm. Was I prepared to weather it? I suddenly felt the urgency to pursue my newfound path, but in the depths of my determination, the question echoed, what if? This shift widened the fracture instead of healing it. As the conversations melded into a haze of emotion and expectation, I sensed a breaking point on the horizon, an inevitable confrontation not merely with my family, but with the course of my own ambitions. I felt my grip on the burgeoning vision slip slightly as I considered how to transform this initial acceptance into sustainable support. And then it struck me, the renovations weren't just physical. Each brushstroke and decision was a pathway toward reconciliation, not just for my family and me but for the nascent ideas battling within me. Where that would lead was the real question. Could I rise to meet my ambitions and quell the fears of those I loved most? The moment of truth was drawing near, and with it, I sensed my journey was only beginning, replete with the unknown. As the night wore on, I felt the weight of possibility shift within me, the spark of rebellion igniting anew as I picked up the pen again. With a resolute heart, I prepared for the next step. What would happen when I began to execute the plans that I had laid bare? The following morning, the sun filtered softly through the curtains, but the rays did little to quiet the storm brewing within me. Today was the first day I would put my plans into action. It felt like I was preparing for battle. As I stood in the foyer, I took a moment to survey the space, a blank canvas that teemed with potential. But my enthusiasm was tinged with doubt. Would I have the skill to make my vision a reality, or would I just create a patchwork of mistakes? Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my pencil and sketchbook. Each line I drew felt like a lifeline, tethering me to my convictions. I needed to believe in my designs, to immerse myself in this process entirely. As I fleshed out the details, colors to evoke warmth, light fixtures that would create a welcoming glow, I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. It wasn't mere interior design, this was my declaration of independence. After breakfast, I called the local hardware store to arrange a visit. I needed materials, paint, and everything in between to bring my sketches to life. The phone call stirred a mixture of dread and excitement within me. I questioned if I had the courage to tackle not just a renovation but a transformation, not only of the space but of my identity itself. When I arrived at the store, the unfamiliar smell of lumber and paint assaulted my senses. It felt daunting, an expanse of tools I had yet to wield. A middle-aged man approached me, his hands calloused from years of labor. His warm smile reassured me just a bit. "Can I help you find what you're looking for?" he asked. "I want to renovate my foyer," I replied, trying to sound confident. "I have a plan, but I'm unsure where to start." Jeremiah, as he introduced himself, walked me through the aisles, discussing the types of paint available and materials best suited for the designs I had in mind. With every suggestion he made, I absorbed the information, noting how comfortable I was in this conversation. The hesitation that gripped me earlier faded, a realization struck. I possessed a certain aptitude for this realm. Articulate thoughts flowed, and I began to visualize not just what materials I needed but how they would harmonize in the space I could claim as my own. After an hour filled with laughter and ideas, I ended up purchasing a vibrant shade of emerald paint along with brushes, canvas drop cloths, and new lighting fixtures. As I left the store, the bags felt heavier than their contents. They carried the weight of newfound confidence. I was stepping into an era where I could frame my own narrative. Yet the buzz of excitement soon fizzled as I approached my house. The colors might speak of hope, but the potential judgment of my family still loomed, like a wall I would have to overcome as I began the renovations. Climbing the steps to the front door, I felt the weight of expectation pushing against my back. I stepped inside, my heart racing. Each corner of the foyer whispered of memories, past moments woven into the fabric of this house. As I opened the paint cans, the familiar smell was sweet, and it enticed me. I envisioned family gatherings, laughter, and conversations filling the room as I painted its story anew. The first stroke of the brush on the wall was electrifying. I could feel energy radiating from the very fibers of the space, almost as if the house woke from a slumber. With every sweeping motion, I released tension built over years. Over time, the brush became an extension of my will, encapsulating the emotional stakes I bore deep inside. I felt liberated. It was exhilarating to unite purpose with action, to see my vision unfold before my eyes. Yet, each stroke came with echoes of doubt. What would my family say when they saw this? Would they embrace the change, or would they resist the unfamiliar palette? Each thought was an anchor threatening to pull me back into uncertainty, but I pressed on, driven by the desire to prove myself. Time melted away, and soon I had transformed the entrance from drab to a lively reflection of who I aspired to be. Yet, just as I finished the application of the first coat, I hesitated to step back and observe the larger picture. The uncertainty loomed heavy in the air. It was then that a soft tap on the open door broke my concentration. Clara stood there, eyes wide with a blend of surprise and uncertainty. "What is all this? You've actually begun?" Her expression was complicated. Was it approval, or was she preparing to voice an objection? The tension crackled as we stood there, both anticipating what the other would say next. With a pounding heart, I faced the reality of this pivotal moment because the time had come to bridge the gap between my ambition and their expectations. And then I realized, in confronting this moment, I was not only fighting for my vision but also wrestling with the very essence of who I could become. Clara's brow furrowed, her hesitation stretching the silence between us. I could see thoughts darting behind her eyes, weighing how best to respond. As the sun streamed through the doorway, illuminating the fresh strokes of green on the walls, I braced myself. "Did you really think you could just do this without talking to anyone?" she asked, the tone of her voice a mixture of disbelief and concern. The question hung there, unrelenting. I opened my mouth, but the words tangled in my throat. Realistically, I hadn't anticipated pushback from her, especially not after all the care I had put into planning and executing this initiative. "Clara, I know it's a big change," I finally managed to say. "But this is something I've dreamed about, something I need to do." "Need?" She folded her arms, her posture rigid. I could almost see the walls she was building around herself, and I felt my own defenses rise in response. "Do you really think changing the paint color is going to fix everything?" Her question struck deep, vibrating through my chest. It wasn't just about paint, it was about reclaiming my identity, my autonomy. The room's colors were a visual representation of my emotional landscape, yet I sensed that was lost on her. "I'm not just changing paint, Clara. I'm changing this whole space, turning it into a reflection of who I am worth being," I asserted, finding my voice. Beneath my own layer of frustration lay a sense of urgent vulnerability. She stepped further into the foyer, her curiosity surging to the forefront but warring against skepticism. "But what does this all mean? Why this? Why now?" It was a pivotal moment, a crossroads between the old, traditional expectations and the fresh beginnings I envisioned. As I realized I was charting new territory not just physically but emotionally, an answer surfaced within me. Every decision I've made is a step away from feeling confined by family views and expectations. I want the freedom to express myself fully for once. For a moment, Clara's eyes softened. I could see that flicker of recognition, as if she understood that my resolution was not born of rebellion but rather from a deep desire for authenticity. Still, she wasn't ready to fully embrace my changes. You think a color can make all that change? Expelling a sigh, I considered her words, the inherent skepticism trailing behind them. She had a point, but the fear tethered to her reasoning filled me with resolve. Maybe it's not the color, but what it symbolizes, Clara. This is just the start. If I can fight through these doubts and make this space mine, maybe I can pursue other aspects of my life that have felt subdued. Her expression flickered between challenge and contemplation, and I could sense she was on the brink of understanding my journey. I needed her support. This step wasn't merely personal, it involved opening a dialogue with my family. As I stared at the painted walls, resonating with my dreams, I asked, "Will you help me? Can we talk about this together?" Clara hesitated, her shoulders relaxing slightly as she considered my plea. "I want to help, but you need to be ready for the reality of what your family might say." "Bring it on," I replied, a spark igniting within me. "Let us confront that together." With a reluctant nod, she stepped closer, the tension simmering but shifting toward collaboration. It was a small victory, yet a significant one. In that moment, I felt empowered not just by the act of creation, but the willingness to forge alliances in this journey. As we began discussing the next steps, my mind raced with possibilities. Each discussed detail transformed fears into plans, and clarity evolved from chaos. Yet the whispered echoes of my family's potential disapproval still resonated in the background. Suddenly, Clara paused mid-sentence, an abrupt change in her demeanor capturing my attention. "Wait, have you thought about what Dad might think?" "I mean, he's the one who took pride in how the foyer always looked." A lump formed in my throat. As much as I sought independence, the groundwork of familial attachment could not be overlooked. Would I renegotiate those long-established ties, all for a vision only I could see? The reality of it crashed over me like a wave, stirring in doubt as unresolved questions clawed their way back to the surface. This transformation would require more than just paint. I needed to prepare for discussions that could swing between support and resistance. Yet, an undeniable urge surged within, to challenge, to redefine, and ready myself for the aftermath of this decision. Could this be where my journey shifted from one of personal exploration to one of confrontation? With that thought racing through my mind, Clara's next question took me by surprise. "Will you be prepared if he lashes out? If this becomes more than just paint?" The weight of her inquiry settled on me, and for the first time, I recognized the real stakes ahead. The only thing standing between me and my dreams was a conversation yet to be had, and I was ready to face it head-on. But deep inside, I questioned whether I truly understood the magnitude of what I was about to confront. Would I have the courage to navigate not just my own desire for change but to face the familial ties that could either bind or break me? The stage was set for a confrontation, a moment of truth looming just beyond the threshold. And as I took a deep breath, I knew this was only the beginning. Could I risk it all? Would I emerge transformed, or find myself altered in unexpected ways? The plan began to solidify in my mind, a vision stitched together with the threads of confrontation and self-discovery. Each discussion with Clara fortified me, yet the prospect of facing my family loomed like an ominous sky, ready to unleash unexpected storms. The reality settled like a stone in my stomach. Their opinions mattered deeply, perhaps more than I cared to admit. "Clara," I said, her concerned expression urging me to clarify. "What if they reject what I want? I've spent years bending to their expectations. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared." She leaned against the table, arms crossed but softening. "Fear's a part of it, but so is courage. You've started this journey. If you want to be authentic, you have to be prepared for their reactions, good or bad. Can you handle that?" A wave of anxiety washed over me. Handling it? What did that truly entail? The confrontation was no longer a mere thought, it was a reality on the horizon. Bolstered by Clara's support, I felt a surge of determination ignite, but shadows of doubt danced at the edges of my resolve. "I can do this," I whispered, almost to convince myself. With Clara steadfastly by my side, we mapped out potential scenarios, skirmishing with each possible reaction. My father's pride, his delicate, woven reverence for familial legacy stood at the forefront of my fears. Would he see my changes as a betrayal, Or could he recognize my struggle to stand apart? What if he lashed out, his disappointment manifesting in words that would feel like cuts? Let us not focus on the worst-case scenario just yet, Clara suggested. You might be surprised by their reactions. Maybe some will appreciate your courage. Her optimism sparked something inside me, a glimmer of hope breaking through the clouds. But I had to prepare for more than emotional battles. I needed a strategy. The days that followed morphed into frantic preparations, the energy of my newfound purpose filling each moment. I revisited childhood photographs, moments frozen in time, portraits that told stories of who I once was before I lost sight of my desires. I made a list of attributes that defined me now, silently reminding myself that these colors would not drown my history, but rather mingle with it to create something entirely new. Clara texted me frequently, reminding me to breathe and visualize. See it as a dialogue, not a declaration, she encouraged. You're not asking for permission, you're sharing your vision. But as the weekend approached, unraveling moments grew increasingly tangled with insecurity. I often found myself staring at the foyer, where the fresh paint glowed bright against the usual drabness that had reigned for so long. It felt like a testament to my resolve. But an ironic twist washed over me. What if this symbol of freedom became an anchor of conflict, dragging me back instead? The phone call came unexpectedly, a familiar voice breaking through my spiraling thoughts. Hey, Clara told me you're making changes at home. What's up? It was my brother's casual tone, a stark contrast to the turbulence brewing within me. He was the easiest to engage with, yet the most unpredictable in his responses. This weekend's the big unveil, I replied, striving for lightness in my tone. Thought I'd finally make the place, well, me. Sounds good, he said, still nonchalant. But are you ready for Dad's reaction? The weight of the question lingered heavily. Ready? Not really. But what choice do I have? Face it and own it, he advised. And remember, you're not alone in this. His words rang strong, reverberating through every doubt etched in my mind. As the weekend approached, I found clarity in my intentions. Transformations have their roots deep within, thriving despite external storms. The colors I applied to the walls were merely reflections of the changes happening deep within me, a signal that I was ready to take the step I had long avoided. Yet, just as a flickering tension started to fade, the panic nibbled at me again. What if my family was unable to see beyond the paint? What if their ingrained beliefs sealed them off from understanding my journey? Facing my family would no longer be just a conversation, it would be a defining point in my quest for self-acceptance. The moment felt loaded, the precipice before me daunting yet exhilarating. It was time to unveil more than the new look of the foyer, it was about revealing aspects of myself long hidden in shadows. Grounded in Clara's encouragement and glimmers from my brother's call, I steeled myself. With my heart pounding, I realized this was as much an unveiling for them as it was for me. I had a new canvas to present, one that represented the complexities of my identity. It was not only a welcome to my chosen changes but an invitation for them to step into my world. But as I approached the doorway, my pulse racing, a chilling thought interrupted my resolve. Could I truly handle the truth if it shattered the fragile image I had pieced together? Would my family's acceptance turn into skepticism or something worse? The door stood ajar, and behind it lay not only my unfinished foyer but all the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The door creaked open, revealing the familiar world I had grown up in, the echoes of our family's laughter still lingering like faint music. I stepped inside, my breath hitching in my throat. Every angle seemed to whisper expectations, every shadow hinted at a legacy I felt unprepared to navigate. I regretted dabbling in the newly painted foyer room. Was I ready to confront my fears now? My family was gathered in the living room, exchanging casual banter. I could hear their voices, the warmth wrapping around me like a familiar blanket, but it felt suffocating, constricting my resolve. This was my stage, a prelude to a much larger performance I had envisioned with Clara, yet the audience remained oblivious. As I moved closer, I locked eyes with my mother. Her smile flickered, momentarily replaced by uncertainty. Had she sensed the shift brewing within me? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my choices settle heavily on my shoulders. The time for transformation had arrived, but the tension crackled in the air like static electricity. "Hey!" My brother's voice rang out, shattering the fragile calm. "You made it just in time. We were getting worried." He pulled me into an enthusiastic embrace, which only heightened the tension in my chest. My brother always understood the undercurrents of our family's dynamics, an unspoken agreement that perhaps he sensed the intensity of my internal conflict. "Yeah, just a little nervous," I admitted. My voice quivered slightly, betraying the facade I tried to maintain. The reality of the evening's significance bore down on me, and I could no longer avoid it. "Don't be. It's just family. You know we've got your back, right?" He regarded me with a reassuring grin that temporarily calmed my racing heart. The laughter and chatter resumed, but I felt detached, a spectator in a play that was meant to be mine. I glanced around the living room, taking in the wallpaper that seemed to yell the values instilled in me: tradition, stability, and conformity. I had wrestled with these for too long, yet as I looked at each family member, I wondered how they would respond to the new shades of me displaying themselves so boldly outside the constraints of what they knew. "Let us do this," I thought, steeling myself, envisioning Clara's mantra, sharing my vision, not seeking permission. I caught sight of my father, his brows set in concentration as he reviewed a newspaper, clearly unaware of the confrontation about to unfold. With a deep inhale, I stepped into the living room fully, as if crossing an invisible threshold into my new life. My heart raced not just from nervous anticipation but from a burgeoning confidence simply to stand there, inviting the inevitable. "Can I have your attention, everyone?" I projected, my voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the noise. The room fell silent, eyes turning to me. It was time for my unveiling, and the faint echo of doubt whispered, urging me to back down. But I pressed forward, feeling an electric pulse of bravery coursing through my veins. I gestured to the foyer. "I've put a lot of thought into the changes around the house. You might notice the new colors." My father's brows knit together, as if preparing for criticism he felt would storm in soon. "What's wrong with how it was?" he asked, his tone dangerously close to challenge. My heart sank beneath the weight of his words, igniting a familiar defensiveness. It was all about comfort and appearance. "But I've learned that my comfort can't exist in someone else's mold," I replied. His eyes narrowed, measuring me. "And what about our traditions, our family's legacy?" An overwhelming silence engulfed the room. Just as I braced myself for the impending clash, it dawned on me I was not fractured. In striving to redefine myself, I was not erasing the past but incorporating it into a rich tapestry of growth. I realized this moment would define not just me, but how my family would evolve with me. Was I ready to weather whatever storm they cast my way? The answer surged within me, not just ready, but committed. "Perhaps it's time we redefine what legacy means for us," I said, allowing the truth of my journey to seep into my words, feeling its authenticity settle like balm over old wounds. As I spoke, I felt my pulse steadying, the resolve blossoming in my chest. But a lingering question struck me like an ominous breeze. Would their acceptance be tempered by their preconceptions? A moment's pause led me to ponder. Their reaction was a puzzle, one whose pieces I could not yet see. But the future held the promise of confronting those pieces with openness, even if the resolution remained shrouded in uncertainty. "Let us see where this leads us," I thought, stepping further into the space where my family's acceptance hung delicately in balance. Would I summon the strength to confront whatever emerged from this? The air thickened with tension as I awaited their next words. My heart raced, balancing on a fragile line between fear and liberation. Would I uncover strength unforeseen, or would my fears transform into obstacles? As my mind turned over those possibilities, the atmosphere shifted, setting the stage for what came next. The silence was palpable, hovering like a heavy fog. Every family member exchanged glances, their faces contorted in confusion, skepticism, and perhaps a hint of curiosity. My father's brow furrowed deeper, questioning not just my decision but the very foundations of his beliefs about our family values. "Redefine legacy?" My mother echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean by that?" The warmth of her concern was laced with a sting of disappointment that made my heart ache. I had anticipated questions, but not the apprehension in her tone. I mean allowing ourselves to grow without the fear of forsaking who we were. We can honor our past while also embracing change, I replied, injecting fervor into my voice. The moment felt like stepping into a void, with no safety net beneath me. I glanced at my brother, whose supportive smile still shone like a beacon of light. I believe our home can reflect that evolution, I continued, fighting against the tide of dread that threatened to well up inside me. Does everyone need to express themselves through paint? My father scoffed, folding the crisp newspaper in his hands, the corners wrinkling as he retained his grip in defiance. I grew up understanding that what matters is stability. You're talking bravado, not wisdom. His dismissal hit me like a physical blow, igniting old fears of inadequacy. In that instant, a fire ignited within, challenging me to defend my resolve and articulate the vision I felt brimming with potential. Stability doesn't always equate to comfort, Dad, I replied, inching closer to a heated exchange. It's about creating a space where each of us feels we belong, where we aren't constrained by the echoes of the past. Through the chaos of spoken and unspoken judgments, I realized I wasn't just demanding acceptance, I was challenging them to evolve alongside me. As their concerned eyes scrutinized my expressions, I found clarity in their confusion. This wasn't just about me, it was about the entire family dynamic shifting. Think about it, how many times have we suffocated our true selves to adhere to a predefined role? My voice rang out, drawing nods of agreement from my brother and sister. What if we could redefine our interactions? Embrace diversity in our identities without fear? I watched as uncertain expressions transformed hesitantly to intrigue. My mother's brows lifted, and I saw a spark of nostalgia flickering behind her eyes. Perhaps memories of brighter colors and warmer conversations clashed with her ingrained caution. But what you're suggesting, my father interjected, cutting through the hopeful air like a knife, could disrupt everything. It's not just paint on walls, it's everything we built our lives around. Or, I said, taking a step closer to him, emboldened, it could be the breakthrough we've all silently craved. Our fears can either stifle our growth or pave a new path forward. In that moment, his eyes softened slightly, the rigidity dissipating just enough for a beam of possibility to shine through. I felt it, a shift in the energy, a challenge to understand each other beyond familial roles. As if coaxing a seed from the soil, I waited for the moment to take root. I took a deep breath, grounding my pulse, and asked, what if we opened a dialogue instead of sealing it with labels? Each word carried an anthem of change that contrasted with their expectations. Let us not fear the vulnerability change might bring. It could be invigorating. My family remained silent, but the tension in the air shifted. The vulnerability hung like a fragile thread, waiting to snap or hold steady under the weight of our collective anxieties. Home should be a sanctuary of growth, not stagnation, I urged, my confidence building with each affirmation I made. Yet, just as I felt the tentative shift toward understanding and acceptance, a sudden noise interrupted the fragile momentum, jolting us back to reality. The door swung open again, this time revealing Clara, her face flushed and eyes wide, as if she had come bearing news more potent than my budding revelations. I need to talk to you, she said, urgency lacing her tone. The room shifted, I could sense my family retreating ever so slightly, drawn into the gravity of our lives entwining with hers. Whatever she had come to announce could irrevocably change not just my perspective but those around me. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet again, and exhilarating fear washed over me. What was she about to unveil? As my pulse quickened once more, I braced myself, ready to receive whatever revelation awaited. In this fluid moment between shaky acceptance and unfolding possibility, I realized my journey had just begun, and the tapestry of my story was far from finished. What pivotal turn would Clara's presence herald now? Clara stepped further into the room, her eyes darting between our family. The air pulsed with anticipation, thick with questions yet unanswered. I just got off the phone with someone about a development project downtown, and they've expressed interest in your design ideas, Sarah. The words hung there, a miracle surfacing at the surface of my brewing chaos. My heart raced, the gravity of her revelation weighing against the doubts that had flickered earlier like embers. "They want to collaborate with you?" I stammered, surprised at how quickly the universe seemed to bend toward my aspirations. "Yes. They saw some of your sketches shared on social media and are looking for fresh talent to breathe new life into the space." Clara's voice overflowed with excitement, and I felt my world tilt in a direction I had only dared to imagine, but never thought would materialize. At first, silence engulfed the room. My family absorbed this news, their expressions morphing from initial shock to budding interest. I watched as their surprise shifted. Could this be the turning point I had sought for all of us? "Wow," my brother finally said, breaking the quiet. "You've really piqued their interest." It struck me then how my brother's disbelief wasn't judgment but slowly transforming into support. "I did share those sketches, but to think someone actually wants to collaborate." My father raised an eyebrow, his initial skepticism wavering as I watched purpose form in his gaze. "How serious are they? I mean, can you really do this?" His tone gauged the sincerity behind my audacity, testing the waters of change with uncertainty still woven in. I think so," I faltered, realization dawning. This was more than a mere opportunity. It was a reflection of my journey, validating my choice to confront fears by chasing dreams. "This could be the beginning of something big, Dad. Maybe we can redefine what our legacy looks like." Suddenly, the whispers of doubt that had haunted me faded as a new conviction took root. Seeing my family's faces shift, my mother's astonished look, my father's slight nod of acceptance was like a gust of wind breaking through a long-standing fog. This was no longer just about colors and paint, it was about aspirations flowing freely in a structure once bound to tradition. Clara continued, "They want someone with a fresh perspective, someone who understands the dynamics of community and design. And who better than you? You have such a strong sense of what a welcoming space needs." The excitement in her voice washed over me, grounding me in the belief that I was capable. "I want to take this chance," I asserted, my voice gaining strength again. "It's time I step out of the box that's felt so comfortable yet suffocating. This collaboration could be the bridge that connects my aspirations with actions." My father's posture softened, and that hint of pride flickered again. "It sounds promising, Sarah. But it'll need hard work. Are you prepared for that?" Standing among my family, the weight of their expectations transformed into a robust support system. "I'm ready," I affirmed, feeling tears prick my eyes not from sadness or fear, but from the sheer exhilaration of claiming my space in this world. I've realized that the crux of my journey isn't just individual, it's reshaping our collective legacy for all of us. And then it happened. A smile broke through my mother's once wary demeanor. "You've always had a gift for understanding beauty, Sarah. I think you should follow this path." Her soothing tone radiated acceptance, igniting the hope that fear could always be vanquished with love and encouragement. I glanced at Clara, my heart swelling with gratitude for her unwavering belief in me, and the magnetic force of family pulling us closer together. Relief wrapped around me, but intertwined within that relief was the adrenaline rush of ambition. Each hesitant step I had taken from confronting the reality of tradition to finally broadcasting my need for a change had led me here, to this moment where I could fully embrace my future. As the conversations unfolded, strategizing for the upcoming meeting, brainstorming collective ideas, and deeply exploring my vision, an essential truth emerged. The more I pressed forward, the more I felt layers of potential peeling away, revealing not just who I was becoming but the people who had always been there. We were not merely reframing a home, we were redefining the entirety of our relationships, re-establishing connection through mutual vulnerability and creativity. I was awakening to my worth, and, in doing so, I invited my family to awaken theirs. This wasn't the end of my story, this was the birth of resilience wrapped in color and connection. And as I gazed into Clara's supportive presence and the tentative nods of my family, I knew one irrefutable truth: I had conquered not just fear, but long-standing barriers. I stood on the threshold of my future, no longer just an extension of my family's desires, but a beacon illuminating my path forward. With newfound confidence brewing alongside hopeful anticipation, I extended an invitation. Let us work on this together. I want this collaboration to reflect all of us. The warmth of my family's smiles enveloped me, returning a vibrant energy into our dynamic as we embraced this new journey ahead. And in that moment, as laughter began to interlace with planning, I finally understood I had transformed my dreams from shadowy vestiges of the past into tangible realities. The journey would not be easy, but I felt ready, equipped with love and support that could buoy me through the turbulent waters ahead. This moment of personal resolution felt complete, and yet, a wave of exhilaration surged within, a promise of what was to come. As I stood there, filled with a profound sense of belonging and purpose, I entered the next chapter of my life, my identity firmly rooted and flourishing in the space between family and dreams, fully embracing the vibrant future I had fought and longed for. Now, as you reach the end of this riveting journey, it's your moment to reflect on this powerful transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that could illuminate your path. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every click makes a difference in sharing these inspiring transformations. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending because your thoughts matter. Let us spark a discussion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering conclusion, inspiring them to embrace their own journeys. This is the moment to show your support for stories that uplift and transform lives. Don't wait even one more second to share.